They offered $1 million to anyone who could start her dead father's Ferrari. Experts failed, engineers laughed.
By noon, a room full of men with million-dollar equipment would laugh at Isaiah Brooks for asking a billionaire for a $7 keychain. By sundown, that same keychain would make everyone in that glass garage question what they had missed. But that morning, before the city had fully opened its eyes, Isaiah was just a father standing barefoot in a narrow kitchen, sewing the torn strap of his daughter's backpack while the refrigerator hummed like an old engine trying not to die. Naomi's lunchbox sat beside his elbow. A purple folder leaned against a chipped mug. Under the folder was a school notice he had already read 3 times. Field trip payment due Friday. Under that was a rent envelope he had not opened because the number inside would not become Kinder just because he looked at it. And beside the coffee maker, folded with sharp yellow corners, was the final warning from Calvin Price, the landlord of Brooks Auto and Restoration. Isaiah threaded the needle again. Slow, steady, no wasted movement. Some men lost their temper when life pressed down on them. Isaiah tightened stitches. Naomi shuffled and wearing one sock and a sleepy frown, her curls pinned unevenly from the night before. Daddy, did my backpack quit on me? Isaiah lifted the bag, tested the strap, then gave it a serious nod. It considered retirement. I talked it out of it. Naomi smiled, but the smile faded when her eyes found the papers on the table. Children did that. They saw the things adults turned face down. They heard the silence around unpaid bills. Are we okay? She asked. Isaiah did not lie fast. He did not perform confidence. He simply turned the papers over with 2 fingers and tapped the sticker Naomi had placed on her lunchbox months ago. Be kind anyway. We don't panic, baby, he said. We prepare. By 7, he was rolling up the dented metal door of Brooks Auto and Restoration into a wet gray morning that smelled of rain, old rubber, burnt coffee, and motor oil. The garage was small enough that every sound had a memory. 2 bays, 1 lift that groaned in cold weather, a radio that caught gospel on clear days and static on all the others. A wall of tools Isaiah had inherited from his father, each one cleaned before closing, even when there was no money left at the end of the day. Near the office door hung a framed photograph most customers walked past without noticing. A younger Isaiah stood beside a red Ferrari, one hand resting lightly on the fender, while an older white man with silver hair smiled like he had found peace in a place no one important was supposed to look. Thomas Hartwell. To the world, Thomas had been a billionaire, a founder, a collector, a name spoken in boardrooms and memorial headlines. To Isaiah, he had been a man who drove past 3 certified luxury dealerships to bring his cars to a crack-floor garage on the south side. The man who drank bad coffee from paper cups and asked about Naomi before asking about horsepower. The man who once said rich people replace too many things because they had forgotten how to listen. Isaiah was loosening a rusted caliper on a city worker's Buick when a black SUV stopped outside the garage. Not parked, stopped, as if the street itself had been ordered to hold still. A woman in a gray coat stepped out with a leather folder pressed her chest. 2 men in suits stayed near the vehicle, looking at the garage with polite discomfort, the way people look at work they need but do not respect. Isaiah Brooks? She asked. He wiped his hands on an oil rag before answering. Yes, ma'am. Her eyes moved over the faded patch on his shirt, the old toolbox, the notice from Calvin Price pinned near the office phone. She tried not to stare. Wealth had a way of glancing at hardship quickly, then pretending it had seen nothing. My name is Margaret Sloan. I represent the Hartwell family. Isaiah's wrench stopped, only for a breath. Thomas. Margaret's mouth tightened at the first name. Mr. Hartwell passed 3 weeks ago. The garage went quiet in a way machinery could not explain. Isaiah lowered his eyes. He had known Thomas was sick. He had not known the world had already closed the door. Naomi's forgotten lunchbox sat on the office counter. Isaiah reached for it without thinking, thumb brushing the sticker again. Be kind anyway. Margaret opened the folder. His daughter, Evelyn Hartwell, is offering $1 million to anyone who can start his final Ferrari. Every certified expert has failed. Your name was found in one of his private maintenance logs. One of the suited men made a small sound through his nose. Not quite laughter. Worse. Isaiah heard it and gave it nothing to hold. Less than an hour later, Margaret brought him through the side entrance of the Hartwell estate and down into a private garage made of glass, chrome, and money. The Ferrari sat under museum lights, red and silent, beautiful in the strange way a coffin can be beautiful when grief has too much funding. Engineers stood near diagnostic screens. Consultants whispered over tablets. A small estate camera blinked from the corner. Dr. Julian Mercer, polished and impatient, looked at Isaiah's toolbox as if someone had rolled in a mistake. Evelyn Hartwell stood beside the car with her arms folded. She was composed, elegant, and tired in a way expensive fabric could not hide. Her voice was controlled when she spoke. Her posture was perfect, but her eyes kept returning to the empty driver's seat. Isaiah noticed that before he noticed the car. "This is the last name on the list?" Dr. Mercer asked. The room studied Isaiah all at once. Black man, faded work shirt, grease under the nails, old toolbox, no badge from Italy, no team behind him, no machine worth photographing. Isaiah did not shrink. He did not harden. He simply stood there, quiet enough for the room to show its manners. Then he looked at Evelyn. "I'm sorry about your father, Miss Hartwell." Something in her face paused. Not softened, not trusted, just paused. "You knew him?" she asked. Isaiah held her gaze. "I listened to his cars." Dr. Mercer gave a dry chuckle. "Unless grief is part of the ignition system, we have already lost enough time." Isaiah let the insult pass like weather. He walked slowly around the Ferrari without touching it. He looked at the tires, the door seam, the untouched velvet box holding the official keys. Then his eyes moved to a side table where Thomas Hartwell's personal effects had been arranged like a life reduced to inventory. Wallet, watch, cufflinks, fountain pen, and near the edge, almost hidden beneath the shine of richer things, a worn brown leather keychain with a dull brass Ferrari emblem rubbed nearly smooth. Isaiah's breathing changed. Barely, but Evelyn saw it. Margaret stepped closer. "Mr. Brooks, if you can start the vehicle, the reward is exactly as stated." Someone in the back lifted a phone. Dr. Mercer folded his arms. Isaiah looked once at the $1 million car, then at the $7 keychain. "I don't want the million," he said. The laughter came quickly. Sharp, relieved, cruel in the way people laugh when they think a man's dignity is too small to matter. Evelyn did not laugh. Isaiah pointed gently toward the tray. "I need that old keychain." And for the first time since her father's funeral, Evelyn Hartwell looked at the mechanic everyone else had already dismissed and wondered why he had asked for the only thing in the room that still seemed to remember Thomas Hartwell's hands. The laughter did not last long, because Isaiah Brooks did not give it anything to bounce against. He stood beside the red Ferrari with his hands relaxed at his sides, his old toolbox resting near his boots, his face calm enough to make the room uncomfortable. Men like him learned early that anger could be used against them faster than truth could be heard. So he did not raise his voice. He let the silence do the first honest work. Dr. Julian Mercer stepped forward, polished shoes whispering across the spotless floor. "You want access to personal property from a deceased billionaire," he said, loud enough for the estate camera to record every word. "And that is your diagnostic plan?" A few consultants smiled behind their tablets. Someone near the back made a low sound that tried to become a laugh, but lost courage halfway. Margaret Sloan adjusted the folder against her chest. "Mr. Brooks," she said carefully, "perhaps you should clarify what you mean." Isaiah looked at the tray again. Wallet, watch, cufflinks, fountain pen, the old brown keychain sitting near the edge like something placed there by accident. But Thomas Hartwell had never carried anything by accident. Not in all the years Isaiah had known him. "I don't need to own it," Isaiah said. "I need to see it." Mercer's mouth tightened. "See it with what?" "Memory." Isaiah did not answer the insult. His phone vibrated once in his pocket. Naomi's school. He knew that number by rhythm alone. A father always knew. His thumb moved slightly, then stopped. Not because Naomi mattered less than anything in that room. Because the room was waiting for him to look distracted. waiting to call him unprofessional, waiting to decide the man with grease under his nails had no business standing near grief wrapped in Italian leather. Margaret turned toward one of the security men by the glass doors. For liability reasons, nobody touches Mr. Hartwell's personal effects without authorization. The guard moved closer. Large, careful, trained to fill space without speaking. Isaiah took one slow step back from the table and lifted both hands just enough to make every movement visible. Evelyn noticed that. The ease of it. The old habit inside his body. Not guilt. Not fear. Something practiced by men who had learned to prove harmlessness before anyone allowed them to be helpful. "I'm not here to take from your father," Isaiah said, voice low. "I came because he once trusted me with things other people rushed past." The words landed quietly, but they landed. Evelyn's eyes moved from Isaiah to the keychain, then to the untouched velvet box holding the official keys. Bright. Perfect. Cold. Who approved this? Mercer asked Margaret. His name was in Mr. Hartwell's records. Margaret replied. Records get outdated, Mercer said. Isaiah looked at him then. Not hard, not wounded, just steady. So do opinions. The climate system hummed above them. A red camera light blinked in the corner. Isaiah's phone vibrated again, small and urgent against his leg. Margaret heard it this time. Do you need to take that? Isaiah kept his eyes on the keychain. My daughter matters. So does the last thing a man left behind. Give me 3 minutes. Evelyn's expression flickered. She did not soften. She did not trust him. But something in that sentence refused to fit the shape Mercer had drawn around him. Some people know what it feels like to be judged before they are heard. If that ever happened to you, stay with Isaiah's story. Evelyn turned her head slightly toward the young assistant, still holding a phone near her waist. Stop recording. The assistant lowered it fast. That was not mercy. Not yet. It was only order. Still, the air changed by an inch. Isaiah did not move toward the tray. He waited. That mattered more than a speech would have. Evelyn stepped closer to the table, close enough now to see the cracked leather, the dull brass emblem rubbed nearly smooth by years of a thumb worrying the same spot. Why that one, she asked. Isaiah looked at the keychain the way a man looks at a voice he has not heard in years. Because your father didn't keep useless things close. Mercer scoffed, but Evelyn did not look away. Later, when she would sit alone and replay the security footage, she would notice what she had missed in the room. Isaiah had never once reached for the keychain. He had only asked. And on the far wall monitor, half reflected in the glass behind him, an archived image of Thomas Hartwell showed the old billionaire climbing into the Ferrari with that same brown keychain wrapped around his fingers. Isaiah did not get the 3 minutes that afternoon. Margaret Sloan called it a pause for legal review. Dr. Mercer called it a return to professional procedure. Evelyn Hartwell said nothing, and that silence, more than the guard near the glass door, told Isaiah where the room had landed. He nodded once, picked up his old toolbox, and walked out without touching the tray. His phone had stopped vibrating by then. That worried him more than Mercer's voice. By the time Isaiah reached Naomi's school, the front office lights had already turned that tired yellow they got late in the day. Naomi sat on a plastic chair beside the nurse's door, her backpack pressed against her knees, her lunchbox on the floor like a small witness. She had not cried. Somehow, that made it worse. Isaiah lowered himself in front of her. Hey, baby. Naomi looked at him carefully. Children raised by one parent learn to read a face before they read a room. They called you 3 times, she said. I know. Were you still with the rich lady's car? Isaiah glanced toward the receptionist, who was pretending not to listen and failing at it. I was trying to help somebody understand something. Naomi picked at the edge of the sticker on her lunchbox. Be kind anyway. Did they let you? Isaiah's hand moved to the strap he had sewn that morning. The thread had held. Barely. Not yet. Outside, evening traffic slid past the school in wet silver lines. His old truck waited at the curb, paint dulled by sun, rain, and years of honest work. On the passenger seat lay a voicemail slip from Brooks Auto, folded by Mrs. Alvarez from the laundromat next door. Calvin Price had called twice. Final lockout notice. Friday, 5 p.m. Isaiah slid the paper into his jacket pocket before Naomi could see the red stamp. He did not hide life from his daughter, but he refused to make poverty her homework. That night, their apartment smelled of reheated soup, rain drying in the hallway carpet, and the coffee Isaiah drank too late because sleep could wait longer than bills could. Naomi did spelling homework at the kitchen table while he sat across from her with a stack of invoices, a dull pencil, and the kind of math that never came out gentle. The refrigerator hummed. A siren passed far away. Above the sink, the light flickered twice, then steadied, as if even the bulb had decided to keep going. Naomi watched him fold one bill, then another. Daddy, if they're offering $1 million, why don't you just take it? Isaiah did not answer fast. His eyes moved to the small framed photo he had brought down from the garage wall that evening. Thomas Hartwell stood beside the Ferrari, younger, smiling, one hand near the open driver's door. Around his fingers, almost hidden, was the same worn brown keychain. Naomi followed his gaze. That's the thing you asked for. Isaiah's face stayed calm, but something old moved behind his eyes. Some things aren't payment, he said quietly. Some things are proof somebody was here. Naomi leaned closer to the picture, her finger hovering near the glass without touching it. Why does he hold it like that? Isaiah closed the invoice folder, not because the question was small, but because it was not. Across the city, high above a street that never went fully dark, Evelyn Hartwell sat alone before a security monitor, watching Isaiah step back from the tray and lift his hands where everyone could see them. She paused the footage at the moment his eyes found the keychain. Then Margaret entered without a word and placed an old maintenance file on the desk. A photograph slipped halfway out. Evelyn looked down. In it, her father stood inside a small South Side garage, laughing beside Isaiah Brooks, with that same worn keychain wrapped around his fingers. It proved Isaiah had known her father once. It did not yet prove she could trust him now. The photograph did not bring Isaiah Brooks back to the estate. Evelyn Hartwell did. Her call came the next morning while he was tightening a belt on a delivery van, with Naomi sitting on an overturned milk crate near the office, finishing the homework she had been too tired to complete the night before. Calvin Price had already left one message before breakfast. A customer had canceled. The lift was making a sound Isaiah did not like. The day had begun with its hands around his throat, and still he answered the phone with a calm, "Brooks Auto." Evelyn did not introduce herself. People who owned rooms sometimes forgot names were not doors that opened automatically. "Mr. Brooks," she said, controlled and careful, "I need you to return to the estate." Isaiah looked through the office window at Naomi, mouthing spelling words over her lunchbox. For the car. A pause. For clarification. That was not trust, not apology. Just a door opened as wide as caution allowed. Isaiah wiped his hand on a rag. "I can come after I take my daughter to school." Evelyn hesitated. "Bring her if you need to. There will be a waiting area." By 10, Isaiah stood again inside the Hartwell glass garage, Naomi beside him with both backpack straps held tight in her small hands. The room had changed, but had not warmed. Dr. Julia Mercer was there. Margaret Sloan was there. A security officer stood near the personal effects table. The old keychain was no longer lying loose on the tray. It had been placed inside a clear evidence box, as if memory itself had become a liability. Evelyn stood near the Ferrari, one hand resting beside the velvet box of official keys. She looked at Naomi for one brief second, then back to Isaiah. "You said my father trusted you with things other people rushed past." "Yes, ma'am." "Then tell me what he trusted you with." Mercer's mouth tilted, ready for performance. Isaiah did not give him one. His cars when they sounded wrong. His silence when he didn't want to explain why. Sometimes his coffee when his hands shook. Evelyn's face stayed still, but her fingers tightened against the table. Margaret glanced down at the old maintenance file. "Why were you not listed as an official Ferrari service provider?" Isaiah looked at the red car, then at the photograph clipped to the folder. "Because your father didn't come to me for official." "Convenient," Mercer murmured. Naomi's eyes moved toward him. Isaiah touched her shoulder once, light and steady, stopping the hurt before it could become words. "We answer with how we stand," he said softly to her. Not with how they speak. Evelyn heard it. She did not react, but she heard it. Then she opened a checkbook from the estate folder and slid a blank check across the table. Tell me what you believe that Keychain means. I'll compensate you for your time whether or not you touch the car. The garage went silent. This was the test. Not the Ferrari. Not the ignition. The money. Isaiah looked at the check, then at the evidence box, then at Evelyn. Pay my shop rate if I work, he said. Don't pay me to turn your father into a transaction. For the first time, Evelyn's voice returned quieter. You think that's what I'm doing? Isaiah did not soften the truth, but he did not sharpen it either. I think grief makes rich people reach for money because it's the tool closest to their hand. No one moved. Even Mercer stopped smiling. Evelyn picked up the check slowly and closed the book. She had asked him to prove something about himself. Somehow, he had shown her something about her. Isaiah still had not touched the keychain. He only leaned toward the clear box, close enough to see the cracked leather, the flattened brass, the tiny dark groove worn near the ring. His eyes narrowed for half a breath. A mechanic's breath. A remembering breath. Your father held it when he was thinking, he said. Not when he was showing off. Evelyn looked down at the bright, official keys, then back to the worn thing in the box. Before she could ask another question, a soft crash came from the service hallway. Mrs. Helen Ward, the old housekeeper, had dropped a cardboard archive box near the entrance. Papers spilled across the polished floor. Everyone turned. No one moved, except Isaiah. He stepped away from the $1 million car, knelt beside the old woman, and began gathering Thomas Hartwell's scattered receipts, one by one before anyone important remembered kindness was allowed. Evelyn watched from behind the Ferrari's windshield as Isaiah handed Mrs. Ward a bent photograph and said, low enough that he thought only she could hear, "Some things don't belong on the floor." Mrs. Ward looked at the photograph, then at the keychain in the evidence box, and her face changed before she could hide it. Mrs. Helen Ward tried to bend for the last receipt before Isaiah could reach it, but her hand trembled halfway down. The paper slid farther across the polished floor, stopping near Dr. Mercer's shoe. He looked at it, then looked away, as if old paper and old women belonged to someone else's department. Isaiah saw it. So did Evelyn. He did not make a show of it. He simply picked up the receipt, smoothed the crease against his palm, and placed it back into Mrs. Ward's cardboard box with the care most people in that room reserve for legal documents. Thank you, Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Ward whispered. Yes, ma'am. Naomi stood near the wall with her backpack against her chest, watching her father kneel in a garage where everyone else seemed too important to bend. The evidence box with the worn keychain sat on the table behind him, catching the cold white light. Evelyn's phone vibrated in her hand. Board call. Estate review. Press inquiry. She let it ring. Mercer cleared his throat. Touching, but we are not here for housekeeping. Isaiah kept gathering papers. One had slipped partly beneath the Ferrari's rear tire. He lowered himself carefully, not touching the car, and used 2 fingers to slide it free. His old work jacket brushed the glossy floor. Someone behind Margaret gave a quiet, impatient sigh. Isaiah heard that too. He gave it nothing. Mrs. Ward was carrying your father's records, he said without looking up. That makes this part of the work. Evelyn's eyes moved to the old woman, then to the box, then back to Isaiah. You don't even know what those papers are. Isaiah placed another receipt flat on the stack. No, ma'am, but I know when something mattered to somebody. Mrs. Ward's lips pressed together. Her eyes flicked toward the keychain in the clear box and away again too fast. Naomi noticed. Evelyn noticed Naomi noticing. The small chain of silence moved through the room like a fuse no one had lit yet. Isaiah finished gathering the scattered papers, then lifted the box for Mrs. Ward without waiting to be asked. The cardboard bottom sagged. He shifted his grip, protecting the old photographs from bending, and carried it to the service table. His phone vibrated again. He checked the screen this time. Calvin Price. Final notice. He silenced it and slid the phone back into his pocket. Evelyn saw the name flash only for a second, but it stayed with her longer than it should have. You can take that, she said, cooler than she meant to sound. Isaiah shook his head once. Not while I'm holding someone else's memories. Mercer laughed under his breath. Memories don't pay invoices. Isaiah looked at him then, calm as still water. Neither does disrespect. The garage went quiet. Not because the words were loud, because they were not. Mrs. Ward took the box from him with both hands. "Your father used to say the same thing," she said, and then looked frightened by her own voice. Evelyn turned toward her. "What did you say?" Mrs. Ward lowered her eyes. "Nothing, Miss Hartwell." Isaiah stepped back, returning to Naomi's side, as if the moment had never been his to claim. Naomi reached into her backpack and pulled out the lunchbox with the peeling sticker. "Be kind anyway." "Daddy," she whispered, "you missed Mr. Price's call." "I know. Is the garage okay?" Isaiah touched the top of her head, gentle but firm. "We'll handle home when we get home." Evelyn heard that too. For the first time, the $1 million in her offer felt less like generosity and more like a blindfold she had been wearing. Later, alone in her office, she would replay the security footage and watch Isaiah choose a fallen box over $1 million car, a trembling old woman over his own urgent phone call, dignity over being understood. Then the camera angle would shift, and she would see what she had missed. When Isaiah handed Mrs. Ward the bent photograph, the old housekeeper's thumb had covered a handwritten note on the back, but not enough to hide 3 words in Thomas Hartwell's careful script. "Ask Isaiah first." Evelyn Hartwell did not watch the footage in the glass garage. She watched it alone in her father's private office, where the city lights trembled beyond the windows and every object had been dusted so carefully it no longer looked touched by a living man. The room smelled faintly of leather, old paper, and coffee no one had finished. Her phone kept lighting up beside the keyboard. Board review. Estate valuation. Press strategy. Dr. Mercer's formal objection. She turned the phone face down and let it vibrate against the desk until the sound became part of silence. On the monitor, Isaiah Brooks bent to gather the fallen papers. Again and again, Evelyn rewound the moment until she knew every detail by shape. His old jacket brushing the floor, Mrs. Ward's trembling hand, Naomi standing small against the wall with her backpack clutched to her chest, the evidence box glowing behind them with a brown keychain trapped inside like a memory under glass. Evelyn paused on the frame where Isaiah handed Mrs. Ward the bent photograph. The old woman's thumb covered most of the handwriting, but not all of it. "Ask Isaiah first." 3 words. Her father's hand. Her father's certainty. Evelyn leaned back as if the chair had moved beneath her. Thomas Hartwell had left her companies, properties, accounts, lawyers, instructions. But not that sentence. Not directly. Not to her. A strange irritation rose before grief could. Why had he trusted a mechanic from a Southside garage with something he had not explained to his own daughter? She stood, heels silent on the thick rug, and crossed to the cabinet where the estate team had arranged Thomas's personal items by value. Watches in one drawer, pens in another, cufflinks lined like soldiers. No one had made a place for the keychain. It was still downstairs, sealed in clear plastic because everyone rich enough to preserve history had somehow forgotten how to hold it. Margaret Sloan entered after one soft knock, carrying another folder. The board wants a decision before morning. They are concerned this Brooks situation could become a liability. Evelyn did not turn around. Everything is a liability to them. Dr. Mercer believes Mr. Brooks is emotionally manipulating the room. Evelyn's mouth tightened. Mercer believes anything he cannot invoice is manipulation. Margaret lowered her eyes, but not before Evelyn saw the flicker of agreement. Across the city, Isaiah sat under the half-dead fluorescent light of his garage office. Naomi asleep on 2 pushed-together waiting chairs with her jacket over her knees. He had missed 2 paying jobs. Calvin Price's final notice lay beside the phone. Isaiah wrote numbers on a yellow pad, crossed them out, then rubbed his thumb over the bridge of his nose and kept going. He did not know Evelyn was watching him become a question she could not put down. Back in the office, Evelyn opened the maintenance file. Inside was a service log dated 8 years earlier. Thomas had written one line in the margin beside Isaiah's name. He listens before he touches anything. Evelyn stared at it for a long time. Then she looked at Margaret. What is his daughter's name? Margaret blinked. Mr. Brooks's daughter? Yes. The word came softer than Evelyn intended. Margaret checked the file. Naomi. Evelyn looked back at the frozen image of the little girl holding her lunchbox, then at the note in her father's handwriting. Ask Isaiah first. For the first time all evening, her next decision had nothing to do with the Ferrari. Find out why my father wrote that, she said, and don't ask Mercer. Evelyn Hartwell came to Brooks' Auto the next afternoon in a black sedan that looked wrong against the cracked pavement and faded tire signs. She did not call a visit. She called it verification. Margaret Sloan sat beside her with the old maintenance file across her knees, and Evelyn kept her face composed as the garage door rattled open to the smell of oil, rain, warm metal, and coffee that had been reheated too many times. Isaiah was under the hood of a postal van, sleeves rolled to his elbows, one hand steadying a loose belt while Naomi sat at the small office desk cutting construction paper into uneven stars. Her lunchbox was open beside her, the sticker on the lid peeling at one corner. Be kind anyway. Isaiah looked up when he saw Evelyn, but he did not hurry to wipe his hands as if her world made his dirty. He only reached for the oil rag, cleaned his fingers, and nodded. Miss Hartwell. Evelyn's eyes moved across the garage, the old tools on the wall, the unpaid notices half hidden beneath a parts catalog, the framed photograph now missing from its hook. Nothing here performed poverty. Nothing begged to be rescued. Everything had been used, repaired, kept. I need to confirm some of my father's records, she said. I figured. Naomi looked up from her paper stars. Are you the lady with the red car? Evelyn paused. Yes. The one that won't wake up? The garage fell still for one soft second. Isaiah turned his head. Naomi. Not sharp. Just a boundary. The girl lowered her scissors. Salty. Evelyn should have corrected the child. She should have said machines did not sleep. Cars did not wake. Grief did not live in engines. Instead, she heard her father's laugh in a video she had watched too many times and found no clean answer. Something like that, she said. Naomi studied her with the unprotected honesty of children. Daddy says cars get quiet when people stop listening right. Isaiah set the wrench down. I said old engines need patience. That's not what you said when Mr. Alvarez's truck cried. Margaret looked up from the file. Evelyn did too. Isaiah did not smile, but one corner of his face softened before he could stop it. Trucks don't cry, baby. That one did. Naomi held up a paper star. It was red, uneven, stubbornly bright. Is your dad's car red like this? Evelyn took a slow breath. A little darker. Naomi reached for a crayon and drew a small brown loop beside the red shape. And it has that old key thing, right? Evelyn's hand tightened around the folder. Why would you draw that? Naomi shrugged. Because in Daddy's picture, the man holds it like people hold something they don't want to lose. No one spoke. Outside, a bus hissed at the corner. Somewhere in the back of the garage, water dripped into a bucket with a patient metallic sound. Isaiah crossed the room and gently turned Naomi's paper face down. Grown folks don't hand children grief to carry, he said. Go wash your hands before your snack. Naomi obeyed, but Evelyn watched the way she trusted him without looking back. That trust unsettled her more than any expert report. She opened the maintenance file because paper was safer than feeling. My father wrote, ask Isaiah first. Isaiah's eyes lowered for half a breath. Then he should have told you why. Did he tell you? No, ma'am. Do you know why? He looked toward the empty hook where the photograph used to hang. I know your father didn't like important things dressed up to look important. Before Evelyn could answer, Calvin Price appeared at the garage entrance with a folded notice in his hand and irritation already loaded in his mouth. He saw Evelyn's car, Evelyn's coat, Margaret's folder, and Isaiah standing between them all. His expression changed into something greedy and wrong. Well, Calvin said, loud enough for the street to hear, looks like the $1,000,000 mechanic forgot to pay his rent. Evelyn turned. Isaiah did not. He only reached for Naomi's lunchbox, closed it gently, and said, Baby, stay in the office. Across the street, someone lifted a phone and started recording. Calvin Price's voice landed in the garage like a dirty rag thrown across clean work. For 1 second, nobody moved. Naomi froze behind the office window with her lunchbox in both hands. Evelyn stood near the open bay door, her black sedan waiting at the curb, the Hartwell file still pressed against her side. Across the street, the phone kept recording. It caught Calvin's smile. It caught Isaiah standing between a billionaire and a rent notice. It did not catch the spelling homework on the desk, the unpaid invoices under the parts catalog, or the way Isaiah had just closed Naomi's lunchbox so she would not have to hear grown men turn hunger into entertainment. "Mr. Price," Isaiah said, calm enough to make the street quieter. "This isn't the time." Calvin unfolded the notice with a little snap of paper. "It's exactly the time. Friday was the time. Then yesterday was the time. Now I see newsworthy company in my building and figure maybe rent got easier." Margaret stepped forward, her attorney voice already sharpening. "This is a private matter." Calvin looked her over, then glanced at Evelyn's coat, her car, her shoes, and finally back at Isaiah. "Private? He brings billionaires to my property, and suddenly it's private." The man across the street zoomed in. A delivery driver slowed, near the curb. Mrs. Alvarez from the laundromat appeared in her doorway, towel in hand, worry on her face. Isaiah did not look at the phone. He looked at Naomi. "Office, baby. Daddy office." Not loud, not harsh, just a door he closed gently in front of her. Naomi stepped back, but her eyes stayed on him through the glass. Evelyn saw that, and something in her chest tightened. Not pity, something more difficult. Respect, maybe, before she was ready to name it. Calvin pushed the notice toward Isaiah's chest. Isaiah took it before it could fall. He folded it once, carefully, as if even humiliation deserved not to be handled poorly. "I'll come by your office at 5, he said. "We can talk without an audience." Calvin gave a small laugh. "Audience is the only reason you're polite." Isaiah met his eyes then. "No, my daughter is." The street went still enough for the fluorescent buzz inside the garage to sound loud. Evelyn's phone vibrated. Margaret's too. Then the young assistant from the estate called, breath tight, saying a short clip had already been posted to a neighborhood page. The caption was ugly in a tidy way. $1 million Ferrari mechanic can't pay his own rent. By the time Evelyn returned to the Hartwell office, the clip had reached Dr. Mercer, the board liaison, and two people who were always happy to confuse embarrassment with evidence. On the glass conference table, Mercer placed a printed screenshot. Isaiah standing beside Evelyn's sedan, Calvin's notice in hand, Naomi blurred in the office window behind him. "This is why judgment matters," Mercer said. "He is compromised. Emotionally, financially, professionally." Evelyn looked at the screenshot, then at the file, then at the paused security footage from Brooks Auto, where the angle cut off just before Isaiah told Naomi to step inside. "Show me the full video," she said. Mercer's smile thinned. "This is the relevant portion." Evelyn did not raise her voice. Relevant to whom? No one answered. That night, Isaiah returned to the garage after dropping Naomi with Mrs. Alvarez. The bay was dark except for one work lamp over his old toolbox. He set Calvin's notice beside a small red paper Star Naomi had left on the desk, the one with the brown loop drawn beside it. His phone showed 3 canceled appointments. One message from a customer said they did not want trouble near their car. Isaiah read it once, then placed the phone face down. He did not curse. He did not throw anything. He only unlocked the bottom drawer of his toolbox and took out the old photograph of Thomas Hartwell in the Ferrari. On the back, beneath a smear of age-darkened grease, there was a date Evelyn had not yet seen. The same date written on the missing page of her father's maintenance file. At 4:30 that afternoon, Isaiah Brooks had 2 places to be and not enough life to stand in both. Calvin Price wanted him at the property office by 5 to sign a payment agreement that looked less like help and more like surrender. Naomi's school had its winter art walk at 5:15, the one she had reminded him about 3 times that morning without trying to sound worried. And on the desk beneath the work lamp lay the old photograph of Thomas Hartwell in the Ferrari, turned face down to show the date written on the back in faded blue ink. Isaiah stared at it while rain tapped the garage windows and the city outside moved on as if a man's choices were small things. His phone buzzed. Margaret Sloan. He let it ring twice before answering. "Mr. Brooks," she said, all restraint and urgency. "Miss Hartwell needs to know whether you have any original records connected to her father's maintenance file. The board is moving to restrict access to the vehicle after tonight." Isaiah looked at the photo, then at Naomi's red paper star on the desk, its brown loop drawn beside it. Then at Calvin's notice. "I have something," he said, "but I'm not sending it through a phone." "Why not?" "Because some things don't deserve to become evidence before they finish being memory." Margaret went quiet. Across the room, Naomi stood in her coat, backpack on, art folder hugged against her chest. "Daddy, we still going?" Isaiah closed his eyes for half a breath. The kind of breath a father takes when there is no painless answer. "I have to make one stop first." Naomi looked down at her worn sneakers, one lace shorter than the other. She nodded too quickly. "Okay." That hurt more than if she had complained. At Calvin's office, the fluorescent light made everything look meaner. Calvin slid the agreement across the counter with a pen already placed on top. "Sign it. Pay half tonight, or I change the locks Monday." Isaiah read the first page, then the second. Hidden fees. Penalties. A clause giving Calvin the right to seize equipment if payment fell behind again. Isaiah set the pen down. "I won't sign away my tools." Calvin leaned back. "Then maybe your billionaire friend can buy you some new ones." Isaiah folded the agreement neatly and pushed it back. "My problems are not invitations." He left without raising his voice, carrying his old toolbox in one hand and the photograph tucked inside his jacket, close enough to feel its corners against his chest. By the time he reached the Hartwell building, Naomi had fallen asleep in the truck, her art folder sliding open on her lap, one red paper star bent at the edge. Isaiah turned off the engine and sat for a moment under the security lights, watching her breathe. The school event was already half over. The garage was still at risk. 3 customers had canceled. And inside that tower, a woman with more money than Weather was waiting for a piece of her father that Isaiah could have sold, posted, hidden, or used to save himself. He did none of those things. He lifted Naomi carefully, art folder and all, and carried her through the side entrance. Margaret found a quiet waiting room near the conference hall, dim and warm, with a couch beneath a painting of the Hartwell estate in spring. Isaiah laid his worn jacket over Naomi's knees, placed her art folder safely beside her, and stood there until her breathing settled again. Only then did he step into the private conference room with the photograph. Evelyn was waiting beside a glass table with one cold cup of coffee, one closed folder, and the tired posture of a woman learning that power was not the same thing as understanding. No merced, no cameras, just Margaret near the door, quiet as a witness. Evelyn stood when Isaiah entered. "I heard about your landlord," she said. "I can make that disappear tonight." Isaiah's hand stayed on the photograph inside his jacket. "No, ma'am." Her face tightened. "Why?" "Because if you pay a man over my head, you don't help me stand. You just move the floor." The words landed harder than he meant them to, but he did not take them back. Evelyn looked away first. Not from shame exactly, from learning. Isaiah placed the photograph on the table. "Your father wrote this date himself." Margaret leaned in. Evelyn did not touch it first. She only stared. Then her phone lit up beside the cold coffee with a message from the records department. "Missing maintenance page located in off-site scan, partial image attached." The file opened slowly, line by line, until the same date appeared at the top of the page, followed by 3 words Evelyn had never seen in any official report. Primary access retained separately. Evelyn Hartwell read the words twice before she understood why her hands had gone still. Primary access retained separately. Not sold, not transferred, not filed with the official keys. Retained. The words sat on the screen like a locked door. Margaret leaned closer, the blue light from the partial scan cutting across her face. The bottom half of the page was damaged, blurred by age and a bad scan, but the date matched the photograph Isaiah had placed on the glass table. The same date, the same car, the same man who had been standing quietly in the wrong rooms for 3 days. Evelyn looked up at him. "What does primary access mean?" Isaiah did not answer quickly. He stood with his hands at his sides, old toolbox near his boot, eyes lowered toward the photograph as if the paper deserved more privacy than the room wanted to give it. It means your father kept something separate. Something like what? Margaret asked. Isaiah's jaw moved once. Not anger. Restraint. That's a question for your father's records. Evelyn heard the wall in his voice. Not dishonesty. A boundary. She hated how much she noticed the difference now. Her phone rang before she could press him again. Board liaison. Then another call. Estate security. Then a message from Dr. Mercer. Do not allow Brooks further access until liability is reviewed. The screen lit, went dark, lit again. Money had a way of making panic look procedural. Evelyn ignored the calls and turned the partial scan toward Isaiah. My father wrote this. He wrote, ask Isaiah first. He wrote that you listen before touching anything. Now this page says primary access was retained separately, and you still want me to believe you don't know what he meant. Isaiah looked toward the hallway, where Naomi slept under his jacket in the waiting room. The art folder rested beside her, one red paper star bent at the corner. His face softened only there, only when his eyes found his child. I know what kind of man he was, he said. That's not the same as owning his secrets. Evelyn's voice came lower. You're protecting him. No, ma'am. Isaiah looked back at her. I'm protecting what grief makes people do with what they find. The sentence landed in the room and stayed there. Margaret stopped turning pages. Evelyn looked away first toward the sealed evidence box that had been brought up from the garage. Inside, the old brown keychain lay under clear plastic, small, dull, unimpressive. Under the conference room lights, the worn leather looked almost soft, a thing touched often enough to remember a thumb. Evelyn opened the scan again, enlarged the damaged margin, and saw part of a handwritten note beside the faded service entry. Not enough to read cleanly, just fragments. Driver refused velvet set, brown leather retained with. The rest disappeared into static. Evelyn's breath caught. Velvet set, she whispered. Margaret looked toward the folder, holding the official keys. Bright, perfect, unused. Isaiah's hand tightened around the handle of his toolbox. Evelyn saw it this time. You knew those keys were wrong. He did not deny it. He did not confirm it. He only said, official things can still be the wrong things. Why didn't you say that in the garage? Because men like Dr. Mercer don't hear truth from men like me until a document says it first. There was no bitterness in it. That made it worse. Evelyn felt something cold open beneath her ribs. Not trust. Not yet. Fear. The fear that she had been standing on the wrong side of her father's last wish, because the wrong people had sounded professional. In the hallway, Naomi stirred and called out softly, Daddy. Isaiah turned immediately. No hositaschen. No debate. Evelyn almost spoke his name, but he was already moving toward the door. Mr. Brooks, she said. He stopped. If I ask you one direct question, will you answer it? Isaiah looked back at the keychain in the box, then at the photograph, then at her. If it doesn't turn your father into a performance. Evelyn swallowed. Was the thing he retained with that keychain? Before Isaiah could answer, Margaret's tablet chimed. A security alert filled the screen. Dr. Mercer had requested emergency authorization to remove the Ferrari's ignition module for independent analysis. Status: approved pending board signature. Isaiah saw it. Evelyn saw him see it. And in that half second, the question between them became smaller than the sound of a door closing somewhere far below. The security alert sat on Margaret Sloane's tablet like a verdict waiting for a signature. Approved pending board signature. Evelyn stared at the screen while the conference room seemed to shrink around her. Outside the glass wall, the city kept burning with clean white lights, indifferent and high above the rain. Isaiah stood near the door, one hand still close to the hallway where Naomi slept, the other resting on the handle of his old toolbox. He did not rush toward the tablet. He did not argue over Dr. Mercer's name. He only looked at Evelyn, and that made it worse. If he removes that module tonight, Isaiah said quietly, he may not be able to put back what he doesn't know he's touching. Margaret's eyes lifted. Is that a technical warning? Dr. Mercer's voice came through the speakerphone before Isaiah could answer. Someone had patched him in from the garage. It is speculation from an unauthorized mechanic with a financial conflict of interest. The words were polished. that made them travel farther. Miss Hartwell, Mercer continued, the longer you allow Mr. Brooks to influence this process, the more exposed the estate becomes. We have a viral video, unpaid rent, missing records, and a man who refuses to answer direct questions. Evelyn looked down at the partial scan. Primary access retained separately. Driver refused velvet set. Brown leather retained with. The missing words stared back at her. Almost enough. Not enough. Her father's handwriting had opened a door, but not wide enough to walk through without risk. Evelyn, Margaret said softly, using her first name for the first time that night. The board needs protection. Isaiah's phone vibrated on the table where he had set it face down. The school art walk reminder lit the screen, already past its final hour. Then another message from Calvin Price. Locks change Monday. Naomi's red paper star lay beside the photograph. Bent from sleep, the brown loop drawn in crayon. Evelyn saw all of it. She saw too much and still not enough. Mr. Brooks, she said, and her voice came colder, because control was the only armor she knew how to wear. Until we can verify the file completely, I can't allow you near the vehicle. Margaret closed her eyes for half a second. Isaiah did not move. The sentence landed on him without spectacle. No flinch, no protest. Just a stillness so complete it made the room feel ashamed before anyone in it admitted why. I understand, he said. Evelyn wanted him to be angry. Anger would have made her decision easier to survive. Instead, he picked up the photograph, paused, and placed it back on the table, not in his pocket. That belongs to your father, he said. Then, after a breath, but my daughter belongs to me. He turned before anyone could answer. In the hallway, Naomi woke as he lifted her art folder and helped her into her backpack. Did we miss it? She whispered. Isaiah knelt in front of her under the cold hallway lights and smoothed the bent red star with his thumb. We missed the room, he said. Not the reason you made it. She tried to smile. It broke halfway. Evelyn watched from the conference room doorway, but did not step forward. She had power over cars, lawyers, boards, buildings, men with titles. She had no clean language for the look on a child's face when a father stayed gentle after being hurt. Isaiah took Naomi's hand and walked toward the elevator. His toolbox rolled behind him with a tired metal sound. The doors opened. He stepped inside. Just before they closed, Naomi looked past him at Evelyn and said, not accusing, only confused, if Grandpa Thomas said, ask my daddy first, why did everybody ask him last? The elevator closed before Evelyn could breathe. Then Margaret's tablet chimed again. The off-site scan had refreshed. One more damaged strip loaded at the bottom of the missing page, jagged and pale, but readable enough to stop every sound in the room. In Thomas Hartwell's handwriting, beneath the date Isaiah had brought her, were 6 words no board had seen. Do not remove the ignition. Evelyn Hartwell did not run after the elevator. She ran toward the garage. The scan stayed open on Margaret's tablet, those 6 words burning behind her eyes with every step. Do not remove the ignition. By the time she reached the glass wall bay, Dr. Mercer already had 2 technicians beside the Ferrari, tool cases open, white gloves on, the velvet box of official keys placed on a metal stand like evidence for a court that had already decided. Board members stared from a live conference screen. Security waited near the doors. Mrs. Helen Ward stood against the wall with both hands folded at her waist, looking smaller than her years. Evelyn walked straight to the front of the room. Stop. Mercer looked up, irritated. Miss Hartwell, we are following emergency preservation protocol. No, she said. Her voice shook once, then steadied. You are about to violate my father's written instruction. The room changed shape around the sentence. Margaret placed the tablet on the hood stand and turned it so the board could see the scan. Do not remove the ignition. Mercer's face tightened, but he did not step back. A partial scan is not conclusive. Evelyn opened the maintenance file, then the camera footage, then the photograph Isaiah had left behind. One by one, she put them where everyone could see them. Thomas in the Ferrari. Thomas at Brooks Auto. Thomas holding the worn brown keychain. The same date. The same note. Ask Isaiah first. Mrs. Ward took one step forward. He told me, she said softly. Every face turned toward her. She looked at Evelyn, not at Mercer. Your father said if anything happened to him, not to let the polished keys be the first thing they tried. He said the car would know the difference. Mercer gave a thin laugh. Cars do not know sentiment. From the doorway, a quiet voice answered no, but security systems know signatures. Isaiah stood there with Naomi beside him, her backpack on, her red paper star held carefully between both hands. He had not come in proud. He had not come in angry. He had only come back because Margaret had called before the elevator reached the lobby, and because Evelyn had finally stopped asking the wrong people first. Evelyn looked at him. "Mr. Brooks," she said, in front of everyone, "I was wrong to remove you before the truth was complete." She turned to the board screen. "And I was wrong to let reputation speak louder than evidence." No one moved. Mercer's jaw hardened. Then let him perform his theory. Isaiah walked to the evidence box. His hands did not shake. When Margaret unlocked it, he lifted the old keychain with the care of a man picking up something that had once been warm from another man's pocket. He turned it over, pressed gently along a worn seam in the leather. A small inner housing clicked loose, revealing an old black Ferrari fob, dull and scratched, hidden inside the cheap brown cover. Not beautiful, not official, used. Isaiah looked at Evelyn. He did not hide it because it was valuable, he said. He hid it because it was his. The garage fell into a silence, so deep even the board screen seemed muted. Isaiah stepped into the driver's seat, but only after Evelyn nodded. He held the old fob to the reader, turned the ignition, and the Ferrari woke on the first breath. The engine filled the glass room, low and trembling, less like a machine than a voice returning from far away. Evelyn covered her mouth. Naomi looked up at her father, eyes wide, and whispered, "Daddy, did Grandpa Thomas hear it too?" Isaiah did not answer right away. He shut the engine off gently, placed the keychain in Evelyn's open palm, and said only, "That part belongs to her." By the time the Ferrari's engine faded, the glass garage no longer felt like a showroom. It felt like a room where people had finally stopped performing. Dr. Mercer closed his tool case without looking at anyone. The board screen went dark one square time. Mrs. Ward wiped one eye with the back of her hand and pretended she was only adjusting her glasses. Evelyn stood with the old brown keychain in her palm, its leather seams still open, the hidden fob resting against her skin like a truth that had waited years to be held correctly. Isaiah did not stay for applause. There was none, and he would not have known what to do with it if there had been. He gathered Naomi's backpack, her bent red paper star, and his old toolbox. Before he reached the door, Evelyn called his name. Not loudly, not like an order. He turned. Naomi stood close to his side, sleepy and watchful. "I owe you more than an apology," Evelyn said. Isaiah waited. She glanced at the keychain, then at the empty place where the Ferrari had gone quiet again. "Tomorrow morning, Hartwell will release the full video from Brooks Auto. Not the clip, the full thing. My statement will say you were right to protect my father's property, and I was wrong to remove you before the truth was complete." He nodded once. "That protects the truth. And your garage will receive a formal service contract for the Ferrari first. Anything beyond that, you decide after reading the terms. Not a favor, not charity. A contract. Your rates, your terms, in writing." Isaiah looked at her long enough for the old habits in her to feel exposed. The part of her that wanted to solve things quickly. The part that still reached for power first. "Send it to me," he said. "I'll read it." Evelyn almost smiled, but let the almost remain. "Fair." Naomi tugged lightly at his sleeve. "Daddy, can my star still go somewhere?" Isaiah looked down at the red paper, wrinkled now from sleep and travel and grown-up mistakes. "Yes, baby." His voice softened. "It can go where we can see it." The next morning, the rain had stopped. Brooks Auto opened under a pale gold sky, with puddles shining in the cracked pavement and coffee hot enough to steam in Isaiah's hand. The same old bills sat on the desk, but beside them was a new envelope from Hartwell Legal, unopened. The repaired backpack hung from Naomi's chair, stitched stronger than before. Her red paper star was taped to the office window, the brown loop drawn beside it catching the light. Evelyn arrived without a convoy. "No cameras. No mercer." Just Margaret waiting by the curb and a plain paper bag with 2 coffees inside. She stopped at the threshold this time. "May I come in?" Isaiah looked at the doorway, then at Naomi, who was coloring at the desk with her lunchbox open beside her. "You may." Evelyn stepped inside as if the word mattered. She placed 1 coffee on the counter and kept 1 for herself. For a while, nobody filled the silence. It did not feel empty now. It felt allowed. Evelyn looked at Naomi's star in the window. "I'm sorry you missed your art walk." Naomi glanced at her father before answering. "We didn't miss why I made it." Evelyn absorbed that slowly. Children, she was learning, could say the cleanest thing in the room and then return to crayons. Isaiah lifted the old oil rag from the counter and folded it once, then again. "Respect is not loud," he said, "but you can hear when it's missing." Evelyn nodded. Not forgiven. Not yet, but listening. Later, after she left, Isaiah started the old truck for Naomi's school run. The engine coughed once, then settled. Naomi climbed in with her backpack, her lunchbox, and the small pride of a child whose father had bent but not broken. On the office window, the red paper star stayed where the morning light could find it. And somewhere across town, Evelyn Hartwell placed her father's old keychain not in a vault, not in a velvet box, but on the passenger seat of the Ferrari, where a man's hand had once reached for it without thinking. Isaiah Brooks had not raised his voice. He had raised her faith in people.